All right, welcome to Thrivable Studio, where patient experience is more than a buzzword. Today, we're talking about showing up, specifically how to get more patients to show up for market research and research studies. Joining me today is Debbie Walter, our very own senior research manager at Thrivable, who's been listening closely every day for over 3 years to what patients really need to stay engaged. I think she's going to be a great guest. And with that, let's chat. Welcome to the studio.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam.
Before we dive in, I would love to hear a bit about your background, Debbie, and kind of, tell the audience as to why it made sense that we brought you on here today to talk about this topic.
Sure, absolutely. So I started in research about 10 years ago, began focusing on molecular mechanisms of diabetes, kidney disease, and other chronic conditions. And after getting my doctorate, I really wanted to start doing something that was really more directly related to the patient experience. And so I found Thrivable. And Thrivable's values really align with how I envision my daily life to be, how I want to live, and how I hope others live in the world every day. And then since starting working at Thrivable, I have led hundreds of diabetes-related studies and studies related to other chronic conditions. And you can imagine with these studies, I've talked to numbering thousands of patients living with chronic conditions and really understood and heard what was going on in their lives. And so it's been a really humbling experience, very valuable to hear from others and what they experience on the day-to-day.
I want to start with something just a little bit high level here about what are some of the biggest misconceptions you think researchers have about why patients do choose to participate in studies?
So I really think one of the biggest reasons people participate in research is altruistic reasons to help others. And that's well cited in the literature, that number one reason reported. But I would also say that something we really undersell as researchers is the value that a patient gets out of participating in research. Many times after a research study, we will have participants reach back out and say, I'm really glad I participated. I learned something, and I learned something that I can use in my daily life to help me and treat my condition. And I think that's really valuable, and we really undersell it. So if we're promoting studies, hey, you're going to learn what new technology is out there. You may learn something new about your condition that you didn't know, how to treat it, what medications are out there. And that really is valuable for our patients to hear and to know that it's not just helping others. You are helping yourself.
That's great. How do you go about communicating to these audiences to ensure that they understand or are aware of kind of maybe the impact that participating in that particular study can have on, their healthcare?
That's a more challenging thing to do. Oftentimes get on the phone with people and they'll maybe sometimes say things like, oh, I don't have the time, or how much money does it pay? And it's really, you can take that opportunity right then and there and say to them, well, it's more than just that. We are training you on a new technology that's coming out, and you may want to know what's happening in the field. This will keep you up to date with the most recent advances, and that is beneficial for you too. And sometimes that's enough, sometimes that does sway them, sometimes it doesn't. And some people are more involved in their healthcare than others, so you have to kind of read your audience.
I saw a stat that shows that acceptable response rate for market research surveys kind of falls anywhere between 5 and 30%, with clinical trials really hovering more around that 5% mark, which varies obviously greatly on the type of study and the population that you're trying to reach. With higher rates being this desirable and kind of why we're here today to talk about this, and often but difficult to achieve, I kind of ask you, as to your experience talking directly with patients, what really drives them to say yes to participating in research outside of everything you had mentioned earlier?
Sure. So I think the obvious answer is money. That drives people. Who often you can get people on the phone and they're on the fence, and even offering another $100 for a study will often turn that I'm not sure into a yes, absolutely. But I think the bigger thing is really understanding their day to day. What struggles do they have to get there? So for example, we've had people who they rely on Uber or public transportation to get places. So if you are able to offer extra couple $100 or $100 or something to offset that cost, or sometimes we have set up our own Uber transportation system for them. So that takes some of that hassle out because some of our population isn't so comfortable working with the technology and the day to day. And it's very valuable to hear their voice because, they're part of who we serve. So if we can make that easier for them, that's great. Childcare is a huge issue for getting people to attend studies. If you are able to say, hey, no, you can bring your children along. You have 3 of them that aren't going to be participating in the study. They're under 5 years old. You don't have a babysitter? Sure, bring them along. We have coloring books, we have crayons, we have people on site who are willing to play with them, whatever you're comfortable with. But bring them along. We have to have that flexibility because, we can't expect people to inconvenience their lives and then give us the answers we need. We have to give a little bit of give and take with them as well. I think we also have to understand that people have lives outside of what we do. Sometimes in our professions, we can forget that they have their daily schedule or they have other things going on. We did have one participant at one point. They had a job interview. They were currently unemployed. They wanted to attend the research, 1, just to participate, 2, to get the money. But then that complicating factor was they had a job interview scheduled and they really needed to attend that job interview. So what did we do? We said, hey, we'll move your lunchtime to the time that your job interview is happening. We'll even give you one of the study rooms since it's not in use. So you can have a quiet space. You don't have to do it in your car. You can focus. You can have the best of all the worlds here. And they were really appreciative. And that really, those are the types of things that turn no's into yeses, really understanding what the day to day looks like in others' lives.
I love that theory of, how do you turn a no into a yes? Do you tend to go into these studies thinking that that's exactly what you're trying to do is turn a no into a yes? Or are you thinking that you're just trying to get the yeses first and you're trying to not get them to say no?
That's a great question. So if you have to work to turn a no into a yes because they're on the fence about research, because they feel uncomfortable with something, we don't want that. We want them to be completely comfortable with the situation they're walking into. Turning the no into a yes is more for the people who are interested and have other extenuating circumstances that they aren't able to participate. So it's really kind of reading the room, so to speak, when you get on with someone. You can tell their hesitancy, and usually if you ask what's holding you back, they'll share, and then you can make the judgment call on, well, you sound like you're uncomfortable with research in general, so that's okay. We can get you on the next one, something you're more comfortable with.
And so you've done hundreds of research studies, talked to thousands of patients, like we mentioned earlier. Is it intuition or is it something it's kind of experience kind of teaches you or you just have it?
No. So honestly, when I first started, I was recruiting patients in general was nerve-wracking. I was like, what am I going to talk to them about? I'm not sure. You're asking very sensitive questions to people and you don't want to offend them. So it's actually through a lot of experience and positive interactions that, I've kind of picked up. You can kind of read in the pauses of what people are saying. And I do think it is learned, but you do start to pick up what people are thinking.
Is this stuff that is planned for? Is it proactive or is it reactive in nature? How much can you plan for and say, you know what, this type of study feels like it needs to get people over the line and to say, yes, we need to take that extra step? Or is it something where you start reaching out and you start realizing we may have to make some adjustments here to fill this study? What's the balance there?
You can kind of tell at the beginning of a study based on time of day, weekday, weekend, what kind of population that you're looking for is going to have trouble meeting those criteria versus those that aren't. So that's another learned experience through experience, what works, what doesn't work. When I first started, I would say weekday is completely fine for pediatrics. And, sometimes it is, but sometimes we need to, think about weekends or really thinking about things like testing, state testing, if you're having it, and you need to know the state testing schedule for different states so that if you're planning a study, you're not trying to call up people and schedule them and find out nobody's going to come because they can't miss school because of this testing schedule. So we have learned to build in some of this along the way. So there always is a little bit of flexibility. Now, when you get too flexible and you give people too many options, then we have troubles the other way because we'll have 5 reschedules because they know that we have multiple time slots that were available. So it's kind of a delicate balance to pick. These are good times, these are bad times. We have this amount of flexibility. We can't give them too much. So yeah, it's very learned and nuanced along the way.
Now I kind of want to shift the attention from enrollment and getting people to say yes to kind of this engagement piece. What are kind of the small details that researchers often overlook actually that may make a huge difference in this patient engagement piece?
I think something that we've learned through experience here at Thrivable is these small details matter. So I think of one example off the top of my head. We recently ran a study. It was an online survey. They were redirected to another platform at the end where they had to complete some additional questions and then they'd be done. It seems pretty straightforward. So if I would be doing the technology, I may have the time to go through the little details and figure out what's not working with my own personal devices. But I've had experience doing that through my education, through time. And not everybody has had that opportunity. So we have to understand that not everybody knows how to work through those things and they need that extra help. So we need to really prepare ourselves for those struggles and to be able to assist with those struggles. And, that's really important because if we don't consider that, what ends up happening, the bigger picture, is we get only people responding who are comfortable and able to work through technology problems versus, and that's a very biased population. We want to hear from everybody, the people who aren't so comfortable with technology. I've seen a couple studies go awry when that happens. And, it can be really little things like writing down this little piece for later, or these people respond faster. This specific population responds to our surveys faster, so we're going to hit that quota much faster versus some of the other population that we want to hear from. They're busy with other things, and so they don't get to our surveys for a day or two, so they're going to be left out. And that really biases your data. You really want to take thought into things like that. That's just one example. We could go on several examples like that will really skew what your results are. And you want to make sure you think through, who do I really want to talk to?
Okay, very interesting, Debbie. So I wanted to take that response and now shift it, though, to this idea of care partners. I think we're seeing a lot of our clients coming to us and really wanting to engage this care partner audience, not just the patient. What kind of advice or small details should people be sweating to really ensure that we get the care partner to enroll, but also engage as well into these studies so we can get that data?
Yeah, so care partners, that's been an adventure for us to figure out, and we kind of learned the hard way with this one as well. Let me just define for you. A care partner is someone who assists a person with a chronic condition in their care in some way, and that can be defined by our individual customers as to how much assistance that is and how often. But really, framing here really matters, and this is the part we learned the hard way. So if you ask somebody with diabetes, do you have a care partner in your life? Do you have somebody who helps you with your diabetes management? That framing isn't the greatest because the initial reaction is almost this, no, how dare you ask me that question? I manage my condition by myself. And, rightfully so. Their management every day, it's always on. They're always thinking about it. So for us to assume that someone else is responsible for managing their condition and they're not, that's a little bit of a naive approach to it. So the framing, what we found is that people actually respond much better if you say, do you have someone who assists you in your management in any way? And this doesn't mean that you require their assistance. It means that if an emergency arose or if you needed help because of XYZ, they could step forward and help you out. This might mean that they don't help you day to day, but they know how to carb count. They know how to change your CGM site. They know how to change your infusion site. They could help you calculate dose if they needed. These kinds of things. So they're not an everyday occurrence necessarily. They can be if that's what we're looking for, but we've actually found that when you frame it that way, people are much more willing to come forward and say, Well, yeah, my significant other does that. My mother does that. And that's really helped us move forward with this idea of care partners. Now, I want to say just because you're looking for a specific person, that doesn't mean that you really want them to attend. So I have a small anecdote here to share. So I was on the phone one day with someone, they had a care partner. So of course I naively got really excited. You have a care partner, I'm going to find this spot. And I said, okay, well, we'd like to invite you and your care partner to join this study. And then there was this big pause. And I thought, oh no, something's wrong. What did I do? And she says to me, well, would it be okay if I didn't bring him? Because when he's there, he kind of overruns the conversation and I don't get to say what I want to say. And I said, oh, well, of course, we don't have to bring him. I mean, you have to think about these things because everybody's dynamic is different. These are the kind of small details that we should be paying attention to. And those pregnant pauses, they mean something. When somebody stops, you need to follow up.
I'm seeing a theme here, right? Like
Yeah,
it's connecting with the people and having honest and real conversations with them and building their trust, right?
absolutely.
So you can get that kind of response out of them, where I feel like
Absolutely.
if you have not built that trust, they either may say yes and it would impact the study, or just bow out completely if you force their hand. All right, well, Debbie, I've taken up enough of your time, so I want to get you out here on one final question. If you could give researchers just one piece of advice to improve patient participation, what would it be? And I want to add the caveat there is, what would you give somebody maybe new in their career and then maybe somebody who's now in your position to kind of really improve patient participation?
I love this question. So I think a real big one is to stay humble. You know, we are all living our lives and figuring it out, and being able to take new information and process it and change with it, is really valuable. And I think that advice goes to everybody in the world, period. But as far as research goes, definitely. And then as far as new to career researchers, I think what I see most, and I remember from my experience, is being uncertain how to communicate with people, uncertain what questions to ask. And I think it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to get on the phone with a patient and ask them, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you explain? Or I recall years ago, I was recruiting for a study and I thought I understood. I didn't quite understand the device that they were working with. And they explained it to me in a way that I understood. They were happy to talk about it. They were excited to talk about it. And I kind of made friends with this person. So now whenever I have a question, I know, oh, I can call her up and ask because she'll tell me. Now I don't abuse that, but it was a great experience. And then for the experienced researchers, I think being adaptable, dynamic, sometimes we can get set in our path that this is my one research question and I need to answer this. And then along the way, you find out 10 other things that you didn't even know about. And maybe you need to pivot. And it's important to remember that, come back to humility and being humble. I didn't necessarily know that. So now I really should rethink my research question based on the information that I've gotten.
That's awesome. Well, Debbie, this is amazing. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. Thank you for all you do for all of our panel members at Thrivable. Thank you for everything you're doing for the medical field in general, because you are a big reason we're driving technology forward. So it was fun. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Adam.